Good morning. Just give me a sec while I get rid of the music here. You probably can't hear it, but I can, and it's very loud in my ear. So good morning. Welcome to a rainy, gray, drizzly day here in the city of Philadelphia. I am your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns. I am the executive producer of Light Beef Productions. And I'm looking for a scene that I created. Ah, there we go. To bring up our first guest. Our first guest is Justin with Dramatists Unite Collective. Justin, welcome. Say hi. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Justin Giachetti. I am the artistic director of Dramatists Unite Collective. We are a brand new nationwide virtual theater collective of sorts. Company kind of puts too much of a business-oriented viewpoint on it. We're a little bit more just doing it because of the artistic love of it. And like I said, I'm the artistic director. I go by he, him pronouns, and it's really wonderful to be here this morning.
Well, welcome. And what is Dramatists Unite Collective doing soon or recently that you would like to bring attention to?
Of course. So coming up April 23rd and 24th, we have a really wonderful cabaret called What the Audience Didn't See, where people will be able to reprise their roles that they didn't get to do either because COVID unfortunately shut down their production or their summer stock or their senior recital at college, or because they were an understudy who never got to go on for the role. And more importantly, this Friday is the last day to submit for Dog Sees God, Confessions of a Teenage Blockhead. We are doing auditions for a brand new virtual production. I'm very excited because I'm directing it. These two productions are going to be fantastic, and that show's streaming the first weekend in June, right in time for Pride Month.
Awesome. Dog Sees God for Pride Month. Explain the thinking here.
So I, as a director, and just as somebody who loves the show, really loves the story of CB's journey through his own sexual identity, and really the burgeoning romance between him and Beethoven. Which, if you guys don't know, Dog Sees God, it is all the Peanuts characters, unauthorized, of course, and they are now teenagers on the cusp of that emotional roller coaster through post 9/11 suburbia, and it takes the highs and the lows and kind of throws them all at you with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek references. And at the heart of it is CB, or Charlie Brown. He is kind of dealing with the fact that he hasn't changed too much while the world around him and all of his friends have changed. And his story is one of accepting himself and the fact that he may be gay, he may be bisexual, but he's starting to have feelings for Beethoven, aka Schroeder, and their romance is kind of the fuel for a lot of the events in the storyline. And what happens, you're going to have to either audition or read or come see the show to find out. But I really feel like, especially setting it in like a 2005, 2006, when there's still so much, there was still so much kind of aggression towards the gay lifestyle, and coming out was still so scary, and it still is today. But there was still a lot more hostility back in the early 2000s, that I feel like really kind of going that direction and having a teenager discover his sexuality and having that be kind of the anchor of the story was really cool to me. So I thought that would be a really great tie-in for Pride Month. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for bringing that to stage. Well, how are you bringing it? Are you bringing it to stages? Are you bringing it to virtual? What's going on?
It is a completely virtual production. For this first year of operation, Dramatists Unite is kind of hell-bent on, or heck-bent, sorry for my verbiage.
Don't worry about your verbiage.
But it is kind of dedicated to doing virtual productions, not only because of COVID, which They're playing in theaters throughout the country that are slowly opening up, but we wanted to give theater not only back to the audiences and allow a nationwide audience base, but also actors from all over to participate in productions as well. I'm personally and a lot of members of my board are based in New Jersey, Philly, and New York. But we've had actors from California, from Baton Rouge, Nashville, Chicago. We've had actors Canada, all over the country, all over America. And this production will be, and the cabaret that we're doing, What the Audience Didn't See, April 23rd and 24th, they both are done on Zoom and streamed live, either to YouTube or to Broadway On Demand or other sources. But Dog Sees God will be a combination between live productions and then cutaway pre-recorded material. And we'll be setting our Dog Sees God in the counterculture between suburbia of Beach Haven, New Jersey, and the punk rock scene of Asbury Park in 2005, when it's still a little grungy and underground. And we're going to be doing some really cool stuff on the boardwalk and things like that. So, still socially distant, still safe, but we're going to do some really cool stuff where the main scenes will take place in the Zoom with people talking, and then some of the monologues will be pre-recorded material that we're going to kind of allow to break up the watching of people just talking on Zoom. So we found some really cool, innovative ways to create really engaging theater through a virtual platform.
Awesome. And where can people pick up tickets?
So you can pick up tickets starting this Friday for What the Audience Didn't See, April 23rd and 24th, on our website, ducollective.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, DU Collective. DU stands for Dramatists Unite. And then you can also click on our casting and opportunities tab on our website to find out more about auditions. Remember, those auditions for Dog Sees God and this Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the character outlines and all like that is on the website as well.
Great. And so I'm sure Meg, our associate producer, is pasting those in the chat right now. Really appreciate all her efforts, and really appreciate that you're bringing this to the virtual space for people to watch. We've been talking a lot about virtual spaces on the internet, and talking about how after people can again gather in one place, we might move into having hybrid events a lot more. Excuse me, let me kind of plug in my camera here. I know I'm dedicated, my production company is dedicated to hybrid events as well. So we hope everybody keeps this accessibility and helps folks access this content and entertainment at a relatively low price point. I want to just quickly acknowledge Amy Smith has joined the chat. I don't have you on screen yet, Amy, but feel free to jump in anytime if you want to say or something or ask any questions. Right now I'm going to bring to the screen our guests, Carly, Chris, and Lisa, and they're here with the film Chimera. If I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, I apologize. Feel free to correct me. If you would all introduce yourselves and your pronouns and what it is you do.
Great. I'm going to start. Lisa could verify. Is that the correct way to say it? Because I've said it wrong multiple times.
It's Chimera. It's a noun. It's a thing that is hoped or wished for, but is in fact impossible or illusory to achieve.
Whew. That just feels heavy right now in this time. I'm Carly Bodnar. She, they pronouns. I'm a storyteller. I like to say I'm a storyteller because I tell stories in lots of different ways on stage, now in virtual digital worlds, also on film. lots of different ways that I tell stories, mainly director, teaching artist, performer. And I'm going to pass it over Lisa.
My name is Lisa VillaMil. She, her pronouns. I am an actor and a playwright and a teaching artist in Philadelphia. This is my first screenplay, and this is the first time that I'm producing a film. Take it away, Chris.
Oh God! Hi, I'm Chris. I do things. My name's Chris Roche. With Lisa, I'm one of the executive producers and actors on Chimera. And yeah, I'm an actor. I'm a producer. Sometimes now I guess I produce film. Teaching artist, sometimes stage manager, opera singer, that sort of fun stuff.
Do all of us in the arts just kind of randomly do everything? Is that just like okay? So it's not just me. Great, awesome.
No, I was just telling an acting student. I was like, "What else? What else do you also like doing?" Because you probably will not make a living just being an actor. You might. That might be a thing that happens. Probably not. So, like, what are your slashes? What else do you enjoy doing?
Right?
We have lots of tools in the toolbox, friend.
Right? Like the single best thing that my undergrad told me was like, you're not gonna only be the thing you came here for. So get good at everything. The promise of stardom. But like the actual tangible skills that come with being able to do multiple things is pretty awesome.
Yep. So anyway, I just, that wasn't meant to be a segue, but yeah, it was just a thought, because every time I have guests, every guest I have, including like me, myself, and I do like 5,000 things, and it's weird in this time of COVID, this time of applying for things, trying to get new jobs, that kind of thing. Everybody wants to know what you do, and it's like, well, might be easier if I started with what I don't do, and then you just go ahead and ask me what like, do you want it done? I find that all like production minded people tend to be that way. Like, we're all just like, yeah, just let me know what you want done, and then we'll work backwards from there. Okay. Tell us a little bit about Chimera and what it is, and what the project entails. What your thoughts are on it.
Great. So right now it's a micro budget film. We're working with a lot of different artists, a lot of different film artists from around the Philadelphia area. We've also got someone from New York. We've got someone from Lancaster. And it's a story that's ultimately about a drug trip that these two best friends take that is supposed to reveal to them their deepest held dream, and how that dream lines up or doesn't line up for the two of them.
Awesome. Sorry about that. That was that. I went to the single camera on my broadcast, and then forgot to pin you to it, so it then just started replicating.
Carly, did you catch that effect? Carly, did you catch that effect?
I did. James, that was a beautiful mistake that I was like, that kind of looks real cool. I'm gonna
just replicative fading. Just feed your video feed back into itself, and you'll get that effect.
Great.
So Chimera, as you defined it, how does that play into the short film?
Ultimately, I don't want to give it away.
Okay.
Ultimately, because it's about these two friends and the dreams that they have. It's sort of about how one of them is having a dream that the other is not having. So it is what they are wishing for is impossible or hopeless to achieve. So that's sort of where the film goes.
And right now, impossible or hopeless to achieve might just be going to lunch together.
Right.
We're going to cover it a little bit later, but the COVID rate is rising here in Philadelphia. So, yeah, impossible or difficult to achieve has so many connotations right now. It's crazy. How did you guys all come together to do this project? I know Carly, but I don't know the rest of everybody. And I'm one of those people that like ends up running into everybody all the time. So I don't how did this come together in this time of COVID? How did you break the bounds of not being able to network in person to get a project off the ground?
We did a lot of interviews online for people over Zoom for people that we were looking for in our production team. It's actually kind of nice to be able to interview people from all over Zoom. I think that was something good for the production. Interviews online. And we're doing COVID protocols too, because it is important to keep people safe. So we have a location. We're going to all bubble at that location. We're going to take tests before we get there and do PP on set. We're really interested in creating a safe environment. We haven't created art in so long, so we don't want to do it the wrong way now,
Yeah. And with the opportunity of at least half of the production being fully vaccinated, and then the other half in the process of vaccinations, just kind of gave us a time frame that we could hone in this idea that started. I believe this started as a play, Lisa. Yeah, and you and I read it one time, and it was just kind of like talking. It was like, this could be a good screenplay, and then went from being friends doing a movie to doing the damn thing, to be quite honest, really quick.
Yeah, and I floated by Carly that we were interested in maybe trying to make something, and Carly was interested in joining. We needed a director. Carly's a great director, so having Carly on board is great.
Yeah, and then we just kind of like used our own networks to grow out of that into what the production has become and who's in the production.
Awesome. Well, go ahead, Carly.
I was just gonna say, I think it was this like kind of sometimes how that just beautifully happens, where people are like, oh, we've got this thing, can you read it? And I was like, yeah, I've been wanting to do some more film work, like, and pivoting in this like virtual digital theater world and doing some more film work. And then it just kind of became the thing where we were like, okay, let's do it. Like, let's find ourselves some funding so that we can help support other artists, help support ourselves too, because something I've learned is let's also make sure we pay ourselves when we self-produce. So definitely like that kind of just, it organically kind of came together, which was really, really beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely self-care, paying yourself, making sure you're personally compensated seems to be something that we're all learning in this time when we have a little bit more time to spend on ourselves. Welcoming back to the screen Justin, and I'd like to welcome Amy Smith to the screen as well. Amy, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, James. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here today. Amy Smith, I use she, her pronouns. Many slashes in my life. I am a dance and theater artist, educator, and facilitator. And I wear a lot of hats in the arts community, including tax preparation for artists, giving financial advice one-on-one to artists, and teaching financial well-being workshops. I work as an actor. I create performances for a long time with the dance company that I co-founded, Headlong Dance Theater, more recently with people like Adriano Chaplin and Anita Holland. And I have taught adjunct professor style And I do anti-racism co-facilitation work with usually with Faith Jones Jackson, working with theater companies and other arts organizations, helping them perhaps move in an anti-racism direction.
Here today.
Amy Smith, I use many hats, and I'm just happy to be here. I'm a big fan of yours, James, as you know, and I'll always show up when you ask me to.
Well, thanks for showing up today. We're gonna cover some areas of interest that we both share. We're gonna talk a little bit about some funding opportunities for people a little bit later in the show. But we're also gonna talk a little bit about funding the arts. I'd like to talk about transition here. So for those who've never watched the show before, this is kind of what I do. I just have horrible transitions into the topics of the day. My guests are here via Zoom. I'm here in my home studio. It's going out live to you guys on the internet, and feel free to comment, like, share, give us a thumbs up, whatever, and let us know if you have any questions or comments or concerns. We've pulled in people from our audience before, just had them come on live in the middle of a show. Because it's important to get regular people's voices out there. So, created this platform. I wanted people to be able to talk. At any rate, so one of the things that's been going on this week is there have been gun violence. There's been a gun violence. What do you call it? Set of testimony in city council here in the city of Philadelphia. The gun violence rate has dramatically risen over the last, let's call it 5 years. The gun violence rate went up from, a 30-year low about 5 years ago till now. It's peaked at a pretty much an all-time high. It's matched some of the previous high record years, and that's unfortunate. It's not great that we have all this violence happening in the city of Philadelphia. As you look around the nation, however, you might see that Philadelphia isn't the only city in the world having this problem. Look around the world even. Philadelphia isn't the only city having this problem. There seems to be an uptick in violence worldwide, and sociologists, psychologists, people who look into this kind of thing are not exactly certain why. They're trying to figure out why and how it might be related to COVID, how it might be related to social changes, etc. I'm a Black person. I have my theories. I think that the uptick in anti-social behavior amongst white supremacists and the uptick in white supremacist ideology has a lot to do with it. Covered that last week on last week's show. I think that when you have a white supremacist environment, it aids and abets all violence everywhere, in all communities. But anyway, that's just my theory. So this week on my title card, I promised some solutions. I know I sent this to city council, but I did some research. I was looking at some information that's out there publicly, but a lot of areas have tried as a solution funding artistic programs that are anti-violence. And all of my other guests over here are artists. What are your thoughts? Like how do you think art and the arts in general might contribute to anti-violence? I mean, I've read a lot of theory. I've seen a lot of people, say this and that. I don't know about you. I mean, personally, I see a lot of opportunity for people to engage in expressing themselves. I think that has a lot to do with it. Any thoughts from you guys? What ways do you see the arts contributing to anti-violence?
James, I've been thinking about this for a couple of years now, is the power that we have as storytellers and artists, and how much I don't think we understand the power that we have in storytelling to kind of help shape a view of what the world is. In terms of like how people are viewed, who's seeing it, what stories we're telling about people, and how we can kind of shift people's perception. Or I don't want to say shift perception, but like open people's eyes to a different way of seeing things. Especially when people are seeing their own stories told and they're connecting and they're truly feeling seen and heard. I think there's a lot of power in that. And I would say the other thing that I think about specifically with nonviolence is the arts are a way to express yourself, but also express your emotions, which we don't allow. I don't want to say we don't allow, but it feels like we as society don't allow the expression of emotions in spaces, or to I
think that's super valid, especially in especially the environments where gun violence is most prevalent. If you look at cis white male society, expressing emotion is horrible for like cis white male people who, and then it's of course used as an excuse, which might be a little bit annoying for people like me, but a dude having a bad day in Atlanta shoots up 3 different massage parlors across 2 counties. How do the arts facilitate that expression of emotion? I find that super valuable.
Yeah. So I actually used to work with a company that would do Title IX and Title X interactive and improvisation work with college campuses. So I've seen it happen in real time. We would focus on things like race, on LGBTQ plus issues, right on down the line, and present these scenarios to the audience, and have the audience give feedback in real time to the actors continuing to play the characters, and have a moderator that will facilitate the conversation. Because if you're looking at an auditorium filled with 300, 400, 500 freshmen who are 18, who have left their hometowns to experience something new, to be around people who are different than them, the reason they left, right? You're going to have 300 different opinions. So how do you do that? So the point being, the arts actually serve as this moment of connection where we do bring all of our baggage and all of our experience and all of our identities into the room. But to facilitate a conversation, we're asking you to either put it down or look at the other person's baggage and see the similarities between what's going on and the differences, and then have that conversation over it. And I've been in plenty of conversations where I have, someone who is from, Perry County, Pennsylvania, cis white Republican, talking with someone who is from the polar opposite, and they find common ground, or they at least get to a point that they can go, okay, I hear what you're saying. And maybe that's part of the issue, that we're not actually listening. We're hearing what the other person's saying. We're jumping into ourselves.
I think there's also a value in the kind of unseen version of this. Like, I appreciate your example of like very deliberative work, but I also think that there's a huge value in the kind of subtext work that we do a lot of times. You know, like the pre-pandemic, there were a lot of people approaching the work of artistry from an anti-racism standpoint by saying, you know, representation matters, representation in on the stage and off the stage matters, telling stories matters, and I think there's a value there of not only because what you're saying, you know, like not hearing the other side of the story. Art in all of its forms kind of gives an audience the chance to hear the other side of the story, but not really think about it, and let it kind of be subversive for themselves. So while you're being entertained, you know, you can kind of humanize and understand the entertainer, I guess, is where I'm going with that. Yeah, I don't know.
Can I jump in with some thoughts?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel kind of two ways about it. I feel like I know that making art together is a powerful experience, and it in some ways is like the ultimate problem solving connection experience. And I also I don't believe that art heals. I don't believe that it brings people together on some deep level. I think it's important. I don't, you know, I'm not here arguing against it, but I think what makes arts programming important in the city of Philadelphia is that it gives young people something to do other than you know, be on the street and get caught up in gang activity. And I think during the street administration, and I don't actually know what Jim Kenney was doing with like after school programming and rec centers and stuff like that. But, you know, I think that's one reason that we had a kind of a downturn in gun violence is there were more places for young Black Philadelphians without a lot of job prospects or upward economic mobility to be able to hang out.
I think the economic part is huge. It's one of the few engagements. So like, you know, a lot of the engagement efforts here in Philadelphia that have been proposed or are being proposed are centered around either sports or religion. I think the economic impact of the arts and having participants engage in a social situation where they also gain economic engagement, I think that's huge. Like that's massive. Like, you know, you're not just engaging a bunch of teenagers in something that they think is cool.
Yeah.
You're also engaging them in something that they are contributing to the economic situation in their own neighborhood, and they can take and move forward on their own because, you know, once somebody is participating, all participation in the arts is practice for future participation.
Totally. Yeah, there's a really cool program in Providence, Rhode Island. There's an arts organization there called AS220 that I really like. And they have this like youth diversion program where they take kids that are in the system and teach them like music tech, you know, producing. And these are marketable skills. Like it keeps them out of the system. And also, you know, once they've spent a couple years in that program, they can get a job at a music studio, or, so arts can teach, arts programming can teach marketable skills that are actually useful for young people later in their lives. I mean, I think training as an artist is useful in whatever you end up doing, but especially with low-income young people, because of the systemic racism in our society, who don't have access to college necessarily, or the kind of networks that make it easier for them to find jobs.
Justin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I also think that kind of going back to Christopher, and I think Carly's point is and I think even yours is the material that we're choosing to produce or to do at the moment is also incredibly impactful. Going back to the anti-violence idea, William Master Simone's play Bang Bang You're Dead is completely free to produce. He put it out there right after the Columbine shootings and basically has left it as a free production to produce. And high schools, community theaters, community groups in general for the last 20 plus years, which is a scary thought that a play like this still needs to be used in the last 20 plus years to teach about gun violence and the motivations and the terror that can come with that. But, it is a great tool that can be used both in the classrooms, in the theater, in other ways to help people understand both the amount of trauma that goes into, unfortunately, somebody doing something so horrific and so destructive, but also the trauma and horror that can come from being on the receiving end of that, of somebody who's stuck in that situation while there is an active shooter situation. And that may be a little bit more school themed, but it can apply all over. We also have shows like Columbinus, the library. We also have shows that are a little bit less on the nose, but about anti-violence and anti-discrimination. I'm one of the big proponents that thinks, as a Jewish man, that Parade needs to come back as a musical and get produced more, because I think in a world where we're seeing anti-Semitic, anti-Asian, anti-Black kind of propaganda and violence and hate coming at full force now more than, well, not now more than ever, but we're really, the quiet parts are being said out loud more than ever. I think a show like Parade or Ragtime, shows that show the different groups of people coming together or tearing each other apart and really holds a mirror up to society, is really important. Versus, as much as I love an Oklahoma or an Annie, those shows may bring in an audience, but we have a duty as artists to really start choosing shows that make an audience think. Entertain them, yes, but I have a personal belief that art is, in one point, entertaining, and also at the same time should start raising questions and make your audience leave kind of second guessing something that they came in thinking. And that could be rehabilitating or reinventing some of these old classics. But I also think there are plenty of really beautiful shows that get very little attention or don't get produced often that can really help shine a light on some of the issues that are happening right now, be that anti-violence or racial and ethnic discrimination, even a show Boy about transgender identity by Anna Ziegler. I think that's Play Night's name, but shows like this really allow us as an audience and as actors and producers to start showing more light on these subjects, and they're a little bit less on the narrow path and a little more on the unwalked path.
Yeah. Well, and even from a producer standpoint, like you were saying, it's a circular effect, right? The audiences want to see things that they connect to. So, but what is the largest demographic of audiences for theater? Older and white. So they want to see stories that reflect themselves. And what have we experienced? Well, audiences now are heavily skewed that way, and a younger audience isn't as accessible because the stories being told aren't told for younger audiences. And I'm not talking 12 years old TYA or anything like that, 30-year-olds. Like it kind of feeds into itself. The two different cycles that are, or the two different elements of that cycle that go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
And this is gonna pivot a bit, Chris, but I also think the issue that something that like theaters need to look at is accessibility. In like, that is why it's bit like looking at who's been predominantly coming in is like, why? What stories are we telling? So like, why this story, why now? Is something that I have started asking myself a lot. And I would love to see more people asking themselves, who are artistic directors and producers and directors. But I think it also becomes this accessibility where it comes down to like, when are we doing shows? What is a price point that is a barrier to people? And then that price point on top of how many jobs are you working? Can you get childcare to come for this show? Like so many levels of like gatekeeping and like accessibility in terms of like, also even just in terms of like how many theaters have stairs and no elevators? How many like, and also like, so I just think that's also another issue in terms of like looking at audiences is like, how do we create the accessibility? And while James, I agree, I want to do more hybrid to make it more accessible. There's still that also level of like, who has accessibility to internet, who has computers, who can...
Oh yeah, those are huge problems.
Like, yeah. So having that hybrid where it's like really looking at how, if we want to say theater is for everybody, then how do we make it?
How do you make it for everyone? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I don't know that anybody does. But, my personal approach has been to just push out content wherever people can access it, make it available, 24/7. Make it available to people at different price points. Like, yeah, we've got to pay for it. But I think this comes back around to solutions too. Like, if we defund the police department, we spend more in this city on the police department than any other category of spending, by a long shot. And currently we spend something, I think the number was $760 million per year on the PPD. Even if we just took this back to the levels that we were at 7 years ago we were at, and for the timeline that I looked at, which was over the past 15 years, we've been at 600,000 per year, plus or minus, a couple of hundred thousand, not a couple of hundred thousand, a couple of thousand, like in the single digit thousands. And that number has just gone up over the last 7 years without any results. So, well, actually with negative results, I would say. So why when all of this research is out there, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but when all the research out there says, if you fund arts programs, if you fund and funding arts programs, for those that are like not tying the pieces together here in my audience, funding arts programs from the government means an accessibility level that means adding accessibility. It creates arts programs. It creates a pathway for us as producers and artists to basically give away our work and not worry about what the audience is contributing to our work as far as monetarily, but allows us to cover our costs and our costs of living as artists through other means, so that we can engage our audiences on an equal footing, not asking them, not holding out the hat or asking them for money up front, but making that accessibility greater. So this is a huge part of accessibility to me. I don't, I think. Go ahead.
I think a really great model that we need to start looking at as a country, and I think even in Philadelphia itself, is strangely the West End model. And And I know that sounds very weird, but the fact that government subsidies allow them to take more risks and be a little bit more bold with storytelling. I mean, to be fair, the Actors Equity in the UK for equity productions doesn't have as much pool as our unions in America. But I think allocating some of the funding for the police to give into the arts allows for three things to happen. One, for more innovative and meaningful storytelling to happen or allow them to be a little bit more accessible to the general public. Two, to allow a lot more arts outreach programs, which helps with social emotional learning, which can help kids and teenagers start to process their emotions and hopefully undo some of the negative effects that can happen later down the line. And three, allows artists to feel like their art is valued. And I think that's something that we can all kind of agree on. I've potentially, because I've realized it throughout the entirety of COVID this last year, is I knew before that people were like, it's art. But like this last year, people have literally turned to me and said, well, you should probably get a second job, or like maybe you should think about Broadway's not coming back, as if Broadway was the end all and be all of theater or art. But like Broadway's not coming back for a while. What else are you going to do? I'm a full-time theater teacher outside of being an artistic director. And while people were saying this, they were still consuming Broadway HD or movies or films or books or commercials or music, other ways, or looking at virtual installments at museums or different ways to access and take in art. So the more that the government starts funding the arts, yep. And if that means allocating some of those funds from institutions like the police, where some of those funds are not necessarily going the right way, and allowing the arts to do what they're meant to do, which is to challenge the system, to provide an artistic outlet for emotion, and most importantly, to make the world question and to kind of get rid of censorship in a lot of ways. I think we may see a change, and more importantly, we may allow audiences and people and average Joe and Mary in Midwest America may finally start realizing that the arts have an impact. They keep taking them. So maybe they should stop putting us down every single time they want to say you should get a real job. Mm-hmm. So I think if the government was willing to, and the police were, if the government was willing to allocate those funds to the arts and put value into the arts, maybe even having a national endowment for the arts. Sorry. I think then people would start looking at us, the everyday artists, not the celebrities that are making millions of dollars on movies, but the everyday artists who are trying to enact change and trying to enact creativity and innovation within our art form as valuable as teachers and medics and everybody else, because artists are the surgeons and doctors of the soul.
Artists are workers. We are workers. Like, we are a valuable part of this economy, and we need to be seen that way. And I don't think our value as a community should be tied to the economic impact we have on the city, but we have a huge, massive economic impact on the city of Philadelphia, and that should be celebrated. And we need to defund the police, and we need to radically increase arts funding from this on the city level, on the state level, and on the national level. This is something,
and all these things are just like
tied
together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're all tied together. Yeah.
This report that Isaiah Thomas's committee just came out with, one of the recommendations. Oh, this is Tina, my pandemic kitty.
Hi, Tina.
One of the recommendations that I think should not be controversial, but certainly has been, one of the recommendations in the report is that the Philadelphia Museum of Art and Mural Arts not receive specific carve-outs out of the city budget. Like, even when the cultural fund was zeroed out and then we clawed our way back to $1 million, whoop-de-doo, with 300 arts organizations to share. The museum got $2 million and Mural Arts got $2 million. Why? Because they are like literally lines in the city budget. That's ridiculous. Like, they need to be an arts organization that applies for funding, just like every other arts organization in the city. Put that $5 million into the cultural fund and then triple it. There are cities like San Francisco or Las Vegas where they put their hotel tax dollars into a coffer, a specific fund to fund the arts community, knowing that a lot of tourism is driven by people coming to the city to engage with arts. So in San Francisco, I think their equivalent of the cultural fund is something like $12 million.
I wanted to put some of this into a little bit of context real quick for viewers who don't pay as close attention to the Philadelphia budget as like Amy and I do. Just to put it a little bit into context, one of the recommendations of that report is also a 1% carve out for the arts out of the city budget. 1% of the city budget of the city of Philadelphia would be $60 million. That's 1%. Like that's some other cities around the world, most other countries around the world obviously outspend the US on the arts, but the kind of ballpark average is 1.8%. If you look at spending on the arts around the world, and that includes kind of some of the things that we traditionally here in the US wouldn't consider the arts, so like maintenance on historic buildings, stuff like that. But we don't, these are areas we don't spend on in the arts that if we were spending around 1% on the arts, maybe we could look into, making these things more equitable and accessible. Why is the founding area of the country, why are all the museums so expensive to get into? Why does it cost a family of 5 a lot of money to get into a museum that talks about the founding of the current government? Why does it cost anything to learn about your history? So, like I go to indigenous peoples museums all the time. Whenever I get to travel and I'm near an indigenous peoples museum, I go to it. And I'm more than happy to pay for it as an audience member. But most of those, the model is government supported, pay what you choose, or government supported and then you can give a donation if you'd like. But why is that not the model everywhere? Why are we spending a lot of money on not spending money on allowing people to learn about themselves? I wanted to talk a little bit today also about immigration, and this is gonna be a rough segue just because I don't have any way of segueing from funding the arts into immigration. Other than to say, immigration does benefit the arts, but I wanted to bring up immigration just because there's you'll see a lot in regular media over the next few days about the migrant children being kept in pods and stuff near the southern border. It's problematic, but a lot of it's very political right now. I find a lot of weird crossover between people who are just trying to point out problems and the current reporting on the migrants at the border. I'm a son and a grandson of first-generation immigrants. I believe immigration is probably the best thing for any country. I don't know why we have these border things. I all of our greatest artworks have come from immigrants. You know, stories of immigration are always very important in advancing art. And you know, I wanted to talk for a little bit about immigration, what the real problems of immigration are, and to also talk a little bit about the fact that we're going to see more immigration over the next century. So climate change is a reality. The local weather patterns in every part of the world are changing. It's a reality. It's a fact. I don't think I don't think even the most staunch anti climate change activists are even saying that's not true anymore. They're just saying that it's not human effect. That's a bunch of bull, in my opinion. I just want to throw that out there. Obviously, you know, our species has released more stored energy since the 1930s than had been released into the atmosphere in all of human history, in all of Earth's history before that, save from a couple of asteroid impacts. So when you release that much energy into the atmosphere, things happen. This is a relatively closed system. Like the only thing the Earth does is bleed off energy a little bit. It's not. It doesn't even bleed off as much energy as gets transmitted to it by the sun. So anyway, that's my lead in to immigration. Immigration is going to happen more because as resources become scarce in an area, people protect themselves by moving to areas where there are more resources. The United States does have more resources than Central and South America right at the moment. So people are going to move. People are going to try and immigrate to places. I don't know, anybody else have any thoughts on that? Nope. Okay.
I have a thought.
I was taking a moment to think. I feel like James also there, like in talking about immigration, it's like it feels like there's a lot of different types. Immigration is one big umbrella, and like in the politicization and a lot of like scapegoating that the government and certain groups have been doing, it has fragmented, like, you know, who are we looking at in immigration? And specifically, like coming from South America, our government like created an unstable system in South America, which is why their governments are not, like, why there is unrest. Like, we created the problem. We're not looking at the fact that we created that problem and looking at ways to also help. In terms of like, it feels like our government goes in, creates a mess, and then we're like, oh, not our problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like, Honduran
and in that way, that like, I don't think it's our place to like, you know, assert more of our weight or privilege as a government, but how can we assist? And then also, when we have destabilized an area through many different means, and then people are coming here because it's stable and they can make money and they can support family and they can feel safer, to like just throw that away, like to just I don't want to say throw away, but to just be in that place where we're like, oh, this is a problem. Like, we actually have to
act in good faith. We have to act in good faith, and the entire immigration conversation is all in bad faith at this point.
Yeah.
And I'll tie it back to the arts in terms of empathy. like putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Like the arts helps teach us that. And it's like, I keep saying we, and I mean we as a society when I say this, is there's also this scapegoating and demonization and dehumanizing of people that like making sure that like we're putting humans and humanity first and not dehumanizing people, I think is also something within like the narrative and the story, because there's also so much story in politics. Like there's so much theater and storytelling in politics where they're doing something to get to a means. And so looking also at that of like, what story are you telling me? Because it doesn't feel like fact. So what is the story that we're being told also by politicians? And then also helping to like, as a solution, change the story.
Right.
Like talking to other people and changing that narrative and that story.
Yeah, I think it was Tony Cade Bombaro who said the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And I think we do have a role to play in like, creating cultural and also social political revolution. But just to get really local and hyper local and tie it back to city arts funding, I was just doing tax prep recently for a Mexican artist, an immigrant Mexican artist who's been living in Philadelphia for, 15, 20 years, contributing to our cultural sector, making excellent work that gets, supported with grants and teaching as it works as a teaching artist. And this artist, because he has an ITIN instead of a social security number, cannot access, was not eligible for the $1,200, $600, $1,400 stimulus checks, is not eligible for the earned income tax credit. There's so many safety net programs, economic safety net programs that immigrant artists are ineligible for because of our draconian, dehumanizing attitude towards immigrants. And that's appalling. Immigrants are the reason that our city has grown in population in the last 10, 20 years. We were losing population for a long time, and now
they're the reason most, correct me if I'm wrong, they're the reason most mid-Atlantic cities are growing at this point.
And they're contributing to our society, and they need to be resourced adequately as arts workers, as artists, as workers.
For anyone who wants to resource, because it's great to talk about everything, right, and address problems, but if you want actionable resources, there's an organization, a volunteer organization called First Friends. Right now they are currently looking into getting stimulus funding for immigrants, for people who are undocumented immigrants, so I would look them up. Another thing that they do, particularly for people who have been detained at the border, you can sign up to be a pen pal with them. The main idea there is that people receiving mail, the act of receiving mail, of handing someone a letter is very humanizing. So if you go onto their website, you can have some actionable steps there that can help you support and be an advocate for immigrants in America.
Thank you. And if you don't mind pasting the URL in the chat, I'll send it out to our chats. I just did want to recognize that it's 11:05. Thanks for the audience that stayed with us, and I wanted to thank all of my guests. I want to talk with you, Amy, just for a couple extra minutes if you have time. But I wanted to, just give everybody the opportunity to get on with their day if they need to. We're going to talk about some funding opportunities for the arts, PPP, EIDL, SVOG, that kind of thing. There's a lot of new information out about all of these programs. The Dramatists United Collective and Chimera, the film. I'd like to thank both of you guys for hanging out this morning and chatting with us. I know my topics are wide and varied, but they all tie back into the arts for some odd reason. And feel free to stick around if you'd like to participate in the conversation about the funding opportunities and recovery from the pandemic economically. And if you gotta go, you gotta go. I understand. And I'd like just to tell my audience that we do this every morning, every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Feel free to tune in live. Feel free to watch the replay. Please give us a like, a share, a subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/LightThiefProductions. Our Facebook page, facebook.com/LightThiefProductions. We're also out there on Twitch, Mobcrush, Twitter, Instagram, all of the places. We try and get these broadcasts out as widely as possible. And if you like what you've seen, please support our efforts on Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. As little as $1 a month, as much as you want. You can support us just by giving us a monthly donation, and that will give you access to exclusive content that you don't necessarily get not being a patron. So just to move on with thanks guys, just to move on with Amy, let me pin you to second screen here. Sorry about that. Great. Awesome. So let's talk PPP, SVOG, etc., etc. I've gone at length and explained these programs to folks on this broadcast. Anybody who's watching who doesn't know what PPP, SVOG, EIDL are, please research these programs. If you are a sole proprietor or an independent artist or a freelancer, these are the things that are out here meant to help you. Yeah, and it's not just for artists. I would say the SVOG is the only program that we'll talk about that is almost exclusively for artists. But all of the programs that are out there are designed to help you who are in the gig economy, in small and micro businesses, to continue to operate and continue to support yourself. All that being said, did you get the chance to watch the SBA's little presentation about the SVOG yesterday?
I did not. I was doing bookkeeping for one of my clients and was in a meeting with the finance committee. Sorry. But you should talk about SVOG because you're much more knowledgeable about it than I am. And then I'll talk more about PPP and EIDL.
Okay.
What did you learn?
Well, SBA finally had a presentation on the SVOG. That's the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. It is a grant program, which means that from its inception, the money is not designed to be returned or paid back to the government. It is, and as with any grant, there are some reporting and documentation requirements, which could be a little bit scary or intimidating for folks who aren't used to receiving grants. But a lot of the organizations that qualify for SVOG are already used to receiving grants and these kind of documentation requirements. So in their presentation yesterday, aside from going over the things that are public, I felt like the SBA was trying to like scare off people a little bit. They've been running these massive programs and they're not used to it. I can understand why they would want to be a little bit intimidating and scare off some potential applicants. What I will say is that these programs were only created because they wanted applicants, you know, and the SBA is running it, but that's not by their own choice. So the SBA might not want as many applicants as the lawmakers who created it for. Yeah. Some of the information that they made public yesterday were that April 8th, the applications will open. So take a look at the SBA's SVOG website portal. They're calling it a portal already. It's not actually a portal yet. It will become a portal. And you can review their frequently asked questions, which includes tons of information that you might not think of. You can review their video, a recording of the video from yesterday's presentation, as well as their videos that they've produced about the SVOG. And you can sign up for updates on the SVOG, which are all super important. I guess it's actually kind of a big detail. In order to get the SVOG, since it's a grant coming from the federal government, you're going to have to sign up for the federal government's funds distribution portal. I forget what it's called off the top of my head.
Is that the DUNS thing?
Well, you'll have to get a DUNS number to sign up for that portal.
I remember that when we used to get NEA funding. Yeah, which is kind of a pain in the ass, really. But, you know, most of the entities that are applying probably have already applied for some kind of federal funding at some point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Some of the categories that qualify, I wouldn't expect necessarily have applied before. Like, it's open to producers who produce not in their own venue.
Right.
So, you know, you don't have to have even though the word venue's in the grant, you don't have to have a brick and mortar venue to apply for this grant. But yeah, so some people might not be all set up. But yeah, so you'll have to have a DUNS number. That's relatively easy to get. It does take a couple of days. So if you don't have a DUNS number or don't know what that is, that's an identification number created by Dun & Bradstreet Company. Dun & Bradstreet Company is a credit reporting agency for businesses, essentially. It's more than that. It's slightly different than what you would think of as a credit reporting agency, but basically it's a company that keeps track of attempts to keep track of all the businesses in the United States, and you can generate a number that represents your company's records on their system, and that will allow you to apply for the disbursement channel from the federal government.
And the other big change, sorry. The big change that the Biden administration did was to say, originally they had said you can't apply for both PPP and SVOG, but now that has changed. So even if you got draw 1 and draw 2 of PPP, you can still go in for the shuttered venues, which is good.
And yeah, that is a huge and important change. So if you are say you are a nonprofit theater company, a small nonprofit theater company, you only have 1 or 2 employees, or you are a for-profit theater company and you only have 1 or 2 employees, don't be afraid of this application. And don't be afraid to apply for PPP funding as well. The PPP deadline extension was signed into law yesterday, which is great. So now you have until May 31st to apply. But
funds are supposed to run out.
Yeah, there's always a but. There's a possibility that funds run out at this point. So if you haven't applied for PPP, find a bank who will take your application and apply today.
At this point, a lot of banks, like kind of traditional banks and credit unions, have actually closed the doors on their application processes because, like, some of them closed. The bank that I used closed up on March 24th because they wanted a week to process applications before the March 31 original deadline. So a lot of banks have kind of shut down their application processes, but there are a lot of online there are a lot of websites that are processing PPP loans, like Womply, Bluevine, PayPal, and a lot of artists I know have been going through those and getting really quick and good service.
The e-banks are all kind of using one processing company, which is interesting. So it doesn't behoove you to apply through more than one e-bank, like to apply through Bluevine and PayPal, but they're all using the same processing company to process those applications. But people, I don't know. I've seen both people recommend applying at more than one place and not applying at more than one place.
Well, what I've heard is the SBA is the backstop. So there's no way that you can get two PPP draw one loans or draw two loans. Loan/grant. I like to call it a loan/grant because it will turn into a non-taxable grant when it's forgiven. And some people are understandably made a little nervous by the word loan. So think of it like a grant. But the PPP will prevent any person from applying. You know, if you have an application in at PayPal, which I did, and then realized like, oh, this is like in limbo land. I can't. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to apply through my bank, which I did. I let PayPal know that I was. You know, I sent them an email and they eventually canceled it. But even if by some miracle they had both hit the SBA on the same day, only one of them would have gone through. So
yeah, I applied through a local bank, and also for round one, I applied through a local bank and also through I think Bluevine, and eventually, you know, the limbo land of Bluevine, I was like, well, this is never going through. Bluevine, I did email them to cancel the application, but they apparently didn't, and then they ended up sending me a status. Oh, hey, the SBA notified us you have another application open. So
you're like, yes, I'm trying to tell you that.
Yeah. So don't worry about if you apply for through more than one place, but also there's not a super benefit to apply. Like, don't throw out 5 applications and expect that they're all going to go through. Only one's going to get through to the SBA, and then the rest are going to get a status message from your social security number or your EIN that says, oh, this company's already applied. So
I do want to mention one thing about with PPP. One of my clients noticed a little shift on her credit score, and I just want to mention that there is a soft pull on your credit when you apply for PPP. It's not a hard pull, so it shouldn't affect your score. I mean, I think this was like 3 points or something, and maybe it was something else that caused that, but made her a little bit nervous. And I reassured her that the soft pull is there just to verify your identity. The PPP does not look at or consider how loan worthy you are or how good or poor your credit is in the eyes of the credit agencies.
Yeah, the EIDL did hard pulls for round one, but they're guaranteeing that they won't do a hard pull for the targeted EIDL advance. And the soft pull from the PPP shouldn't affect your credit. Soft pulls aren't technically considered. So I don't know how that client.
It was probably just coincidence, but this is someone who was also nervous about the word loan. So it's and I really understand that concern. It is called a loan, but I like to tell people you're virtually assured forgiveness, especially as a self-employed person. The calculation is just based on your Schedule C, and the application process for forgiveness is just you basically signing a letter saying, I received $10,000 from PPP. I spent it paying myself. I signed my name asserting to that fact. And they reserve the right to ask you for more support, but the likelihood of that is minuscule, in my opinion.
Especially there's There's actually been several drives from within the SBA and in Congress and legislation to just blanket forgive everything under a certain amount. And when you're talking sole proprietor or you know, anything, you're talking minuscule amounts compared to some of the PPP loans that are going out.
Right, they're capped at like 21,000 or 20,800.
Yeah.
And what I heard going around Congress was just forgiving any loan amount, automatically forgiving any loan amount under 150,000. So that would save the SBA literally millions, hundreds of millions of dollars if they just did that instead of making us go through the forgiveness process. So hopefully they'll do that.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, you know,
save themselves some time and money.
Save themselves, save us some time and money. It would be wonderful.
But even if things stay exactly as they are, it's virtually assured. So I just like to underline that because I think you know, I know some people are still nervous about applying, or like I just got an email this morning from someone who went through Womply, which does an interesting thing. When you apply for draw 1, they say, would you also like draw 2 at the same time? Would you like a double loan / grant? And people are a little nervous, and some people, this client just accepted the first one and not the second one because she wasn't sure if she could take the second one because she hadn't used the funds of the first one yet. But the language of the application is for draw 2 is if you have used or plan to use your first draw to pay yourself, you can apply for the second draw. So if any listeners are applying now and go through Womply or any lender that offers you draw 1 and draw 2 at the same time, just take it.
Yeah, that plan to use wording is really important because for a micro business, plan to use is really easy. You can be like, okay, here's my plan.
My plan is to pay myself with this money that you just gave me. Thank you.
yeah, that'd be great. I'll do that. Relatively easy to get forgiven, especially if you're a micro business, because you can use it to pay yourself, which is what it's there for. If you're a micro business, that's not cheating the system. That's not working around the system. That's just doing what it was actually designed to do.
Yes.
So. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of folks get super nervous around this stuff, and I understand. I mean, like, you know, my significant other is super nervous, and she's like, hey, you know, what's going on? Is this going to cause a problem in the future?
Right.
Hopefully not.
No,
you know, the law is written so that it's not supposed to.
It's really meant to get cash into the hands of small businesses. And I was really happy that the Biden-Harris administration put that 2-week pause on larger, you know, businesses with more than 20 employees, even though the timing was kind of awkward and a lot of banks and lenders weren't ready with the application for Schedule C filers. It still signaled that what the Biden-Harris administration wants this program to do is to get money into the hands of sole proprietors, self-employed people, women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, small micro businesses. Like, that is what this program is designed to do, to keep us afloat in this pandemic time. So it's really doing, like you say, it's doing what the program wants when you take this money and pay yourself with it.
Yeah, and with the previous administration before Carranza has been moved into the top position at the SBA. She's been on the job for a week and a half now, so not the major changes are probably a little ways off. But you know, with the previous administration, there was some back and forth about who and how these programs were designed to support between legislators and the SBA itself. Now there's kind of a synchronicity between the two. You know, oh, this is supposed to help micro businesses.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to tell you about a conversation I had with Chimera Castro, who's a dance artist. We've been working together on this project called Creating New Futures, and with Emily Johnson, who's another dance artist. And Emily and Chimera met with someone in the NEA's, I want to say Office of Civil Rights or something like that, where the NEA is trying to figure out how to more equitably fund artists. I'm not optimistic about that possibility, but PPP was the first time since 1990, when the NEA 4 happened, that the federal government was putting federal dollars into the hands of individual artists. So like, there's so many things to celebrate about this program, but one of them is like a big FU to Newt Gingrich and all the people that destroyed individual fellowships from the NEA because they were offended by certain works of art. And since then, since 1990, there has been no direct pipeline of federal money into the hands of individual artists until now with the PPP. And it's not designed, it's not just for artists, but it includes artists. So artists are getting it, which is great. And one of the things Janira and I were talking about is proposing, this wouldn't be an NEA program, it would be an SBA program, but targeting artists. Like if you file a Schedule C with NAICS or NACIS, whatever the code is, 711-510, as an artist, you are eligible for a special program. This is our dream scenario. Like the PPP, it's a forgivable loan, or it's just a straight up grant, and it's based on your Schedule C gross or net. Maybe there's a setup where you have to file 3 years in a row before you're eligible, or some other way of ensuring that someone is actually working as an artist. And it could be capped, so we're not throwing money at high income earning artists. There could be a cap like there was with the stimulus checks. If you make more than 75,000 or 150 if you're filing jointly, you're not eligible for this program. Like, there could be some way of capping it to ensure that it goes to low income and middle income artists. But I think a program like that through the SBA would be really impactful on artists' financial lives.
It'd be interesting even to pull it further back than the SBA, because the SBA is a non-governmental organization. They just happen to service governmental programs. It would be even more interesting to pull it back a level and do it through the IRS, so that there wasn't so much interpretation. Like the child care tax refund.
It could be a tax credit. Yeah, it could be a refundable tax credit if you file Schedule C with 711-510, and you make under a certain cap. You just get an automatic $1,000 or $2,000 refundable tax credit, or $3,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is. Like, that would also be really impactful. Yeah, you're right. It would be cool if it was just there's a line on the 1040 that I've always been confused by. A performing artist tax credit on the 1040 that is tied to the unreimbursed employee expenses, that is designed for certain performing artists who are wage earners to be able to deduct certain employee expenses. But there's there's a cap on it. Like, I think you can't make more than $16,000 and be eligible for the credit. So maybe that's something that could be expanded, like just lift the cap, let in performing artists that are wage earners and Schedule C filers. Like, I'm not sure what could happen there, but maybe it would be reforming that line rather than inventing a whole new credit.
Yeah. Well, I would like to recognize that it's 11:30. And if you want to stick around, we can talk. I can talk this kind of policy stuff all day. Obviously I do all the time, but I want to recognize your time. I don't want to hold you here forever. So just to sum up our little after talk, if you if you are in the arts, if you are a sole proprietor, if you're in the gig economy, apply for the PPP. Even if you haven't applied for round one, all the organizations that are still taking applications are still taking applications for round one and round two. Apply for round one. There's differences between banks and organizations that are servicing these loans. So some of them will let you apply for both at the same time. Some will not. Some will require you to apply for round one, get the loan dispersed, and then apply for round two. But make sure you apply at least for round one as soon as possible. If you can apply for both, apply for both. There's no reason not to. It's designed to give you up to 8 weeks per round of what your income was last year, basically, on average. There's some more details than that. I've gone into them before. Feel free to look at old broadcasts. But yeah, so 16 weeks between the two rounds of income. SVOG is 6 months, so slightly more than 16 weeks. So an extra 2 months you might get from the SVOG, and the SVOG amount will be offset by the PPP amount. Even if you are on the kind of cusp of being able to qualify for the SVOG, I highly encourage anybody in the arts, in live arts or filmmaking arts, to go ahead and apply. If you support that industry through your work, apply for that grant. It's designed to help that industry because and that's both live arts and filmmaking. Make sure to get that money if you can. At least apply for the money. You may get turned down. It's an investment in time to get a possible grant. All of us in the arts who apply for grants know that investment in time. We've all applied for dozens, hundreds of grants, and we get the best amongst us gets like a 4% return rate on getting the grant when we apply for it. So we all know that investment in time, but invest the time. It's worth it. 2 to 6 months of income from last year being replenished for the time that you missed being able to work this year is an excellent investment in your future. It's an investment the government wants to make in your future, and I would say just go for it.
Yes. James, you are such a wealth of information, and I appreciate you so much. I appreciate how much you are just blaring and getting this information out there to artists and gig workers. It is so helpful and so needed. And thank you for bringing me in to talk about this stuff. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Well, thank you for coming around and talking about it. I really appreciate it. You mentioned that you do tax prep. I just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, I'll share your website out on the chats.
We're pretty busy this year, and we don't advertise, but we do still have. There are 6 people on the team. PhillyTaxPrepForArtists.com, and I know there are preparers who still have room in their calendars for new clients. And the deadline for tax prep, the tax deadline has been moved back to May 17th from April 15th. So that's good news if you haven't yet gotten your tax things together.
Could you type the URL in the chat?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we would love to help you artists who need tax prep help.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get in touch with you because I don't quite. I've been formalizing my business this year, and I don't quite understand everything. So I'm going to have to get some help from you guys.
You are welcome, James, always.
And
all right, so speaking of which, I'm gonna go do some tax work.
Awesome.
But thank you so much for having me. I wish everybody financial, emotional, mental, and physical health in the coming days.
All right, awesome. Come back on when you can.
I
really
will.
appreciate
Bye-bye.
your time.